We're just going to jump right in. The love that moves the sun and the other stars is not how the pilgrimage of the Divine Comedy ends. Yes, it's the last line of the poem and it's what we remember, but listen again to the last full sentence. But now my will and my desire, like wheels revolving with an even motion, were turning with the love that moves the sun and the other stars. The end of the pilgrimage to heaven is the union of the pilgrim's will and desire with divine love. It is not just about what he sees, it is about what he, this human creature, becomes. That journey would neither begin nor end without Mary. She is not merely one of many personages in these pages. She is the paragon of what the human person is meant to become, exemplar of the transformations to take place, queen of those on high, mother bending down to those below. Mary is the human person fully alive. She is active in bringing all other persons to fullness and into union with God. Before Dante moves, she moves for him. When he comes to his end, he makes the final move with her. Of all the many things the Divine Comedy is, it is, in a special way, a work born of devotion, of Dante's devotion to Mary. It is a devotion practiced every morning and every night, a devotion that stretches from the down low at the point of despair up to the heights of celestial glory. The Divine Comedy is inseparable from this devotion, and Dante means for his words to enkindle in us a devotion in kind. Today, I am going to try to show you what I mean, but I have to ask you to work with me. We must put before our mind's eye what Dante gives us. A lot of this is going to have to do with movement. It's hard work to see what this poem lays before us, even harder because our time is short and you have to rely on my words. But if we make the effort, maybe we can see and experience what it is like for the human will and desire to move with divine love. So let's get going. We'll start where Dante started. Midway in the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost. We meet Dante right in the middle of things, and he includes us in the very first line, midway in the journey of our life. Where are we? In a dark wood, on a crooked path. How did Dante end up here? Well, as he says, how I came there I cannot really tell. I was so full of sleep when I forsook the one true way. Confessions of a Friday Night Undergraduate. I don't know what that is. This is the initial condition of the lost man, the would-be pilgrim. He is sluggish, full of sleep. This is a condition of not moving, of hesitancy and neglect, lacking zeal, lacking vitality. We already sense that there was one true way, and yet he ignored it. He did not pursue it. We should imagine, put it before your mind's eye, the darkness and the sluggishness. But what else shall we bring to our mind's eye? Well, Dante tells us. But when I reached the foot of a hill, there, where the valley ended, that had pierced my heart with fear, looking up, I saw its shoulders arrayed in the first light of the planet that leads men straight, no matter what their road. That dark wood is in a valley, and that valley loads his heart with fear. At the edge of this valley is a hill, and Dante stands at the base of the hill. Glancing up, he sees the light of the sun haloing the hill's peak. The sluggish man stands in a dark wooded valley with a hill before him and light breaking through the gloom ahead and above. The light calms him, and daybreak dispels the terrors of night. Clearly, he should go toward the light. He should climb. But what does he do? And as one with laboring breath has escaped from the deep to the shore, turns and looks back at the perilous waters, so my mind, still in flight, turned back to look once more upon the pass, no mortal being has ever left alive. At the moment when the light breaks for him and calms his fears, he chooses to stay where he is and look back, rather than hurry forward. It's significant here that he describes himself as a shipwrecked sailor, because that makes the light above like the Stella Maris, the star of the sea. Light has come upon his darkness, but he chooses to look back to the darkness. See that, feel it. The darkness, the valley, the hill, the hesitancy, the sluggishness, the stasis. As he stands still, lacking urgency, new burdens and fears gather strength. As some of you might recall, when he finally does turn to take a step forward, he is thwarted first by one beast, then another, and a third. What those beasts are is not reducible to just one explanation, but the one thing we can and must surely say is that these beasts set upon him after he stalled and delayed. Soon, they turn all his progress to loss. He loses sight of the sun. He falls backwards. Despair and ruin begin to envelop him. I lost all hope of making the ascent, he says. We have to take this all in as the initial image of this pilgrim who has not begun his pilgrimage. The lack of movement is the main thing. What preserves Dante in this peril from the utter ruin of the damned, of being stuck forever? He sees in the last moment, as he falls back into darkness, a faint figure of he knows not what. Desperate, without any other resources, he speaks his first and the most important word he does speak in the whole of the Divine Comedy. Miserere, miserere di me. Mercy, have mercy on me. Now notice, the figure did not appear because Dante called for mercy. Rather, the figure appeared and Dante, at his darkest moment, responds by calling out for mercy. We know who this figure is. It is Virgil, who will become Dante's first guide. In his initial address to Dante, Virgil chides him. He says, "But why retreat to so much misery? Why not climb up this blissful mountain, the beginning and source of all man's joy?" Virgil eventually persuades Dante to move. Dante follows Virgil. But no sooner do they start than Dante stalls again. He's sluggish, he hesitates, he overthinks it, he entertains his fears and doubts. And as one who unwills what he has willed, changing his intent on second thought, so that he quite gives over what he has begun, such a man was I on that dark slope. With too much thinking, I had undone the enterprise so quick in its inception. Do you know what that's like? In the first few steps of his pilgrimage, Dante does not slide back down to where he was. It's actually worse. Failing to follow the fervor of that merciful inspiration, he has now doubled the habitual force of his own lack of urgency. The crisis deepens, and so Virgil must employ the greatest persuasion he can muster. He cannot take Dante by force. He cannot make Dante follow this path away from misery. Dante has to will it. Dante has to desire it. All Virgil can do is to dislodge him, Virgil can do is try to dislodge him from his complacency. And so here is what Virgil says. To free you from this fear, I'll tell you why I came and what I heard when first I felt compassion for you. The most persuasive thing Virgil can offer is the reason why he has come to this lost man in the dark wood. What Virgil tells Dante is the beginning of everything. He tells him why mercy has come to him before he even asked for it. He tells Dante that in heaven, a lady, gracious, good, and kind, grieving and weeping at your peril, sends me to you, breaking the high and unbending rule. Mary weeps for Dante. the Blessed Mother is introduced according to the compassion she feels for sinners, for this sinner. And she moves in compassion. She acts. In her grief and sorrow for Dante, she beckons Lucy, who beckons Beatrice, who goes to the threshold of hell to call up Virgil, the poet whom Dante admired, to go to this lost man at this late hour to woo him out of his sorrow, his shame, his sluggishness. Virgil appeared to Dante because of the Blessed Mother's mercy. The moment Dante calls for mercy, mercy is already there. This is the beginning of Mary in the Divine Comedy. She is the primary mover in the entire action of the poem. She is the mother of mercy. Mercy comes through her. The revelation of the mercy come to him, the mercy of the Blessed Mother through Lucy, through Beatrice, delivered in Virgil, unblocks Dante's heart and fills him with courage. As he says to Virgil, "Your words have made my heart so eager for the journey that I've returned to my first intent. Set out then, for one will prompts us both. You are my leader, you my Lord and Master," I said to him, and when he moved ahead, I entered on the deep and savage way. The mercy that comes from Mary causes Dante to move. It is persuasive and empowering. His will is involved. One will prompts us both, he says. His desire is redirected. I am so eager for the journey that I've returned to my first intent. Dante has been moved, and now he begins to move. That's enough of hell. The Purgatorio, the steps Dante would not take. From this brief reading of the Inferno, we have grasped the pilgrim's initial stasis and the first movement of the entire journey, which comes from Mary in heaven, who weeps for Dante. When we begin the Purgatorio, recalling that initial sluggishness increases the impact of the commanding words of Cato to Dante and the company of souls that he finds at the base of Mount Purgatory. Dante and the others are spellbound and delighted by some sweet music when Cato interrupts. "What is this, laggard spirits? What carelessness, what delay is this? Hurry to the mountain and there shed the sloth that lets not God be known to you." I was a resident assistant here at Notre Dame. I said this from time to time. Cato breaks them out of their trance. There is no time to delay. Purgatory is not a time of waiting. It is a time of hurry to the source of joy and the end of all desire. There's a shift in the kind of movement here. Dante is not so much moving away from something. He must move toward something. And that something is bliss, beatitude. Just as Dante's conversion has come late, so his penance begins in tardiness. But truly, doesn't every conversion come late? Doesn't every penitential journey begin later than it could have and really should have? Time is wasted in the ways of sin, peeking around hell. But once the turn comes and penance begins, time itself regains significance. Fittingly then, when traveling through the lower regions of Mount Purgatory, before Purgatory proper begins, Dante comes upon those who repented late in life. Dante encounters one man who, at the moment of his death, simply spoke the name of Mary. Though his life to that point had been misspent in vanity, the sound, the taste of Mary's name on his lips was enough to save him from the dark abyss. Then hell protested for being robbed of this soul, and we can probably understand the outrage. That's enough? That's it? Maybe Dante was bothered too. And yet, then again, was he any more deserving of finding himself at the beginning of this new life? He's the one who, at the last moment, as he was falling into darkness and despair, whispered a desperate miserere. Whether now or at the hour of death, the salt of the tears of mercy, the sweetness of the name of Mary, is sufficient for spoiling the appetite of hell. And so on the evening when Dante prepares to leave these lower regions of purgatory and enter purgatory proper, it's like when you get off the toll road into South Bend, you know what I mean? Like into purgatory proper, he hears a song rising up from below. It comes from penitent souls who delayed turning to God because of their preoccupations with worldly matters. The hymn they sing is Salve Regina. Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. Turn thine eyes of mercy toward us. Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God, that we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ. These belatedly penitent souls cry out to Mary from their valley of tears. They hope to be made worthy of her Son. They want to be changed. They beg for her aid, that she may turn to help them with her sweet mercy. On each of the terraces of purgatory, they taste that sweet mercy. Each time Dante and Virgil enter one of these terraces of purgatory, they first encounter a virtue of Mary as proclaimed in the Gospels. That's the sweetness. It gives them hope. The punishments or the forms of penance the souls endure thereafter on those terraces is the reformation of a life. And then, as they leave each terrace, having been healed of sin and strengthened in virtue, a particular beatitude is proclaimed. That is hope's fulfillment. On each terrace, what is first encountered in Mary becomes true of the redeemed sinners. They become virtuous, capable of happiness. I want to show this to you on the first terrace, and only the first. The terrace where pride is healed. I want you again, if you can, see this with me as best as you can. Here's how it goes. Immediately upon passing through the gate of purgatory, which closes behind him, Dante stands looking out on this first terrace. Here's what he says. Our feet had not yet stepped on it when I perceived that the entire encircling bank, steep and impossible to climb, was made of white marble, carved with so much art that Polycletus and nature's very self would there be put to shame. The angel who came to earth with the decree of peace that had been wept and yearned for all those years, which opened heaven, ending God's long ban, appeared before us so vividly engraved, in gracious attitude, it did not seem an image, carved and silent. One would have sworn that he was saying Ave, for she as well was pictured there, who turned the key to love on high. And in her attitude imprinted were the words, Ecce ancilla Dei, as clearly as a figure stamped in wax. The first thing the penitent sinners being healed of pride encounter is the art of the Annunciation. But this is no ordinary art. The angel is carved with such gracefulness that he appears as living, as really there. So much there that you could hear the greeting come from his lips. But even more, the lady he hails is present in such a way that her body, her soul, are shaped to the words she speaks, to what she is. Behold, the handmaid of the Lord. The way Dante describes this art, we ought to wonder what the true work of art is. Is it that which is carved into the marble, or that which is imprinted on this living human being? Mary is here encountered as the humility that heals pride. She embodies it. It ensouls her. It is her virtue. Dante stresses the beauty of this art. It, or rather she, is pleasing to look at, and the exchange of voices is courteous and delightful. When considering the terraces of purgatory, we often jump to look at the punishments that are endured on each, perhaps for the same reason that the Inferno is the most read cantica. We like to look at suffering, other people's suffering. What we miss is what none of the penitent souls can miss. The very first thing they encounter as they enter this terrace. a living image of their hope. The sin-stained souls are proud. To be healed, they must become humble. In encountering Mary, they encountered the substance of the things hoped for. This is the sweetness that revives their appetite for what is good and impels them toward their penance. The form of penance that the proud take on is, as you may remember, to carry on their backs huge boulders that force them to bend down low as they beat their breasts. The proud are those who have puffed themselves up. Their sickness is their lack of humility. Dante tells us, as we look upon these sorrowful souls, we should not dwell upon the nature of the suffering, right? But think instead of what is to follow. I'll work on it. It's indeed painful for the rigidness of pride to be bent into humility, at least as painful as the crushing weight of a giant boulder pressing your body down. But these souls have already encountered the beautiful health they desire when they first entered this terrace, and so they take on this weight willingly to become like Mary is. When later Dante reaches the end of the terrace of pride, Dante hears what the healed sinner hears, what the healed sinner feels. As he says, when we were moving off in that direction, Beate pauperis spiritu, a voice was singing in tones that speech could not express. Now we were climbing the hallowed stairs, and I felt so much lighter than before when the ground I trod was level. Blessed are the poor in spirit. This beatitude is proclaimed as the soul healed from pride graduates from this terrace, literally takes steps up from it and out from it. On the stairs, Dante feels lighter than he did when he was on level ground, the level ground of the terrace itself. Surely the one healed of pride no longer feels the weight of that boulder on his back, but even more, the sinner healed of his sin has become strong. Pride wasn't strength, it was weakness. It wasn't a quality, it was a lack. Through his penance, the penitent has become humble. Humility is strength. It is power. It is virtue. The acquisition of this virtue is recovered health. Virtue has become enfleshed in them. This goodness is now their motivation. This dynamic runs through each of the remaining terraces, though the ways in which Mary's virtue is encountered on each terrace varies. We lack the time to move from terrace to terrace, but let's just stand back to see the virtue of Mary made present on each of the terraces. By the virtues in Mary, the vices are overcome, and each time with a different gospel scene as the point of contemplation. After humility over pride, there is sympathy over envy, meekness over wrath, zeal over sloth, poverty over avarice, temperance over gluttony, chastity over lust. At each stage, the wounded souls are given food that nourishes them, as if a mother bird were bending down to her young to feed them from her very mouth. With that first sweet taste of health and goodness, they desire to be full of it, and they go willingly through penance to become well. When their healing is complete and their strength revived, they are made ready for beatitude, for true happiness. They're humble and meek, merciful and pure of heart, and all the rest. Or as Virgil says to Dante once his climb to the top of Mount Purgatory is complete, now is your will upright, wholesome and free, and not to heed its pleasure would be wrong. I crown and mitre you Lord of yourself. He has been restored to his created goodness. His appetites and tastes have been redeemed. All that is left is for Dante to choose to be happy. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Who wouldn't choose to be happy? But that choice is the awesome burden of freedom. Soon Virgil leaves Dante, and Dante is left facing Beatrice. Beatrice is the lady who first sparked joy in Dante, in whom Dante first glimpsed his own call. to beauty, to truth, to goodness. Now he encounters her again, the very one who is, for him, the moment of choice. The Beatrician moment is the moment of choosing glory with everything he has. You probably know this. There's far more to say about Beatrice than we can say here, just as there is a great deal more to say about the earthly paradise than we're going to get to. All we can say for now is that Dante must claim and ratify his own penitential journey in full. He must confess all his sins, letting them go for good, consenting to having his vices severed from him. It's a horrible choice. It costs him everything. Before Beatrice, he dies to himself in cleansing waters and rises from those waters in his goodness alone. The end of purgatory, then, is the fullness of health, the wholeness of freedom, the realization of the powers of those virtues that complete our humanity. Mary has wept for sinners and helped nourish them back to health by the sweetness of her own virtue. Now she waits to receive the devotion of their prayers, so she may offer them to the source and end of all love. Now things get hard. Great news, right? But this is the part I really love. The Paradiso, as I call it, the dynamics of ascent. The Paradiso is a recollection of glory, a memory of the union with light itself. The beauty of the beauties told here is indeed too beautiful for words. And yet, Dante must try with his words, by divine command, to tell of the good he found there. The journey from darkness to light presented at the very beginning of the Divine Comedy, remember where we started, in darkness? That, by now, is but a limping, partial metaphor for the journey that is to take place in heaven. We're no longer moving from darkness to light. The darkness has passed away. Now, we're moving from light to light. Conversion and penance are over. This is about sanctification, the glory of holiness. About this change, St. Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, declares, "Behold, I tell you a mystery, we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye." And again, in his second letter to the Corinthians, he proclaims that we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being changed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. That's the subject of the Paradiso, the change from glory to glory that happens in the twinkling of an eye. 33 cantos later. The thing with the Paradiso, though, is everything is slowed down and given to us, given to the pilgrim, bit by bit, so that he can understand this unfathomable, sudden change. And we can imagine it with him, hard as it is to do. Dante stands with Beatrice in the earthly paradise at midday. This is the beginning of the Paradiso. And already in this first canto, we're given, in brief, a glimpse of the journey to come. Work on seeing it with me. Can we do it? It's really hard. But if we do it, it's really delightful. He's standing with Beatrice in the earthly paradise at midday. The sun is high above, and they're bathed in light. The middle of the day, bathed in light. Dante looks to Beatrice and sees that Beatrice is looking directly at the sun. Dante gazes upon Beatrice's eyes so that as the sun is reflected in her eyes, so are her eyes now reflected in his own eyes. The sun enters his eyes through Beatrice's eyes. So by this, something marvelous and unprecedented happens. By seeing the light of the sun in Beatrice's eyes, Dante is made capable of looking directly at the sun itself. He can't hold the vision very long, but for a brief moment, he is capable of bearing the light of the sun. What he beheld was more than he could have imagined. In his words, he says this, "Suddenly it seemed a day was added to that day, as if the one who has the power had adorned the heavens with a second sun." This vision is indescribable, but the best we can do is to try to imagine a sunrise coming not out of the night, but out of the middle of the day. A second sun added to the first, light upon light. Overwhelmed, Dante cannot hold on to this vision. His powers fail. He lowers his eyes and sets them again on Beatrice, who has her eyes fixed on the light above. Right from this first canto, from this experience, as the ascent to heaven begins, we have to hold on to two things. Here's the first. First, Beatrice is the one who nurtures and nourishes Dante. Second, that nourishment is for the sake of making Dante himself capable of beholding the light which rapidly intensifies, like sunrise upon sunrise at midday. Now look, saying these two things is actually not enough, because it matters very much not just that Beatrice nurtures and nourishes Dante toward the bearing of the light. It matters how she does so. Dante tells us she does so like a mother. When atop Mount Purgatory on the threshold of the earthly paradise, when Dante first encounters Beatrice, he knows it is her before he can even see her clearly, because he feels the force of her presence. What was his immediate response? As he says, "I turn to my left with the confidence a child has running to his mama when he is afraid or in distress." His response to her presence is the same as a child who, scared of the dark, runs towards his mama's arms. Then much later in Paradiso 22, when there is no longer any darkness to run from, Dante says, "Overcome by wonder, I turn to my guide," now Beatrice, "as does a child who always scurries back to the one who has his utmost trust." And she, like a mother, quick in comforting her son when he is pale and out of breath, with a voice that often called him in the past, said, "Don't you understand that you're in heaven?" It's important for us to see Beatrice in this way so that we are rightly prepared to see Beatrice eclipsed. She is indeed eclipsed, but not as a darkening object eclipses the source of light, or as light eclipses a dark object. No, she is eclipsed in a way we have never otherwise seen, as light eclipses light. And so we're going to come to what I'm going to call the pivotal canto. Actually, everything we're doing is just so we can try and do this. Are you excited? We're here. This is where we've been trying to get to. Paradiso 23 is a canto of surpassing beauty. I dare call it my favorite canto, though it would probably be foolish to try to claim that it is something like the best canto. But since our theme today is the Blessed Virgin Mary in Dante's comedy, this canto is of prime importance because this is where, for the first time, we see Mary. We do not come here merely for Dante to tell us something, or even, much less, for me to tell you something. Here again, we have to open wide the eye of our mind. Opening it, I'm telling you, even wider than we've done before. I'm going to do my best to echo what Dante has done his best to show us, but even he says that he trembles at this task. So I beg you, really, I beg you, work with me. See as best as you can with all your imagination what I'm about to speak of. Here's how the canto begins. As the bird among the leafy branches that she loves, perched on the nest with her sweet brood all through the night, which keeps things veiled from us, who in her longing to look upon their eyes and beaks, to find the food to nourish them, a task, though difficult, that gives her joy, now, on an open bow, anticipates that time, and in her ardent expectation of the sun, watches intently for the dawn to break. So was my lady, erect and vigilant, seeking out the region of the sky in which the sun reveals less haste. Dante's talking about Beatrice. She is a mother, yes, but the image here is concrete. Like a mother bird who perches above her nest with her babes looking up to her for food, so Beatrice waits, ready, to give Dante what will nourish him. And like that mother bird that waits eagerly for the dawn, so she can go gather what will fill her babies with joy, so Beatrice looks deeper into the heavens for a new light to dawn, light within light, that which she desires to give Dante. Things happen fast after this. The visions are overwhelming, but do not let go of that image of the mother bird and her babes. Remember, this whole time, they're bathed in light, and here a new light dawns. This is what Beatrice has waited to show Dante, to give to him. And Beatrice says, "Behold, the hosts of Christ in triumph, and all the fruit gathered from the wheeling of these spheres." The saints arrayed in glory are revealed to Dante in one swift movement. They appear like the dawn within another dawn. For up above, Dante sees, up above them, a sun that kindled each and every one of them. The light of Christ is here arrayed in his company of saints. They're not dark things upon which the light shines. By his light, they have become lights themselves, and together they shine magnificently. Sunrise at midday. Dante will now begin seeing Beatrice as she truly is, a saint in Christ's light. So with affection, she commands him, "Open your eyes and see me as I am. The things that you have witnessed have given you the strength to bear my smile." Her smile has been an enigma to him, her joy too strong for him to bear. But by his ascent through the heavens, where he has looked upon saints one at a time and in small companies, his capacity for joy has been increased. Now he is able to see the source of Beatrice's joy, the light by which she is made radiant. He cannot yet sustain the vision of that light directly. That's yet to come. But he is now ready to begin seeing Beatrice's full beauty, because he has followed her to the source of her joy, being nourished every step of the way. Even here, though, Dante must be chastened, though sweetly, lest he settle too soon, lest he settle on Beatrice's beauty. He no longer needs to be pulled from the darkness into the light like the Inferno, or chased from incomplete and transient pleasures like the Purgatory. Now he needs to make an abundantly greater leap. Dante and us with him must move from delight to delight, from joy to joy. So as he marvels at Beatrice's radiant, holy visage, she impels him to broaden and quicken his gaze. "Why are you so enamored of my face that you do not turn to the lovely garden flowering in the radiance of Christ? There is the rose in which the word of God took on flesh, and there the lilies are, whose fragrance led mankind down the good path." Beatrice tells Dante what every beloved must in some way tell her lover: "I am not your end." You, Dante, are made to behold all beauty. Beatrice is indeed radiant, but she is one flower shining in the garden of Christ's light. The movement from light to light must continue, and so Dante, in his eagerness to please Beatrice, resumes what he calls the struggle, the battle of the light. Dante moves his vision from the flower and flame that is Beatrice to the entire garden of the saints. His eye is drawn to what Beatrice foretold when he sees the rose in whom the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Behold, the Blessed Mother, and with her the apostles, the lilies, by whom was proclaimed the good news, who came to this world through Mary. Mary. Dante is seeing for the first time the one who wept for him, the lady from whose eyes flowed the mercy that reached him in the valley of tears. Seeing her, what does he see? She is the brightest of the lights, not because the others are in any way dimmed, but because in a way that defies description, the magnitude and quality of her glory is over full. He calls her the living star. A few verses earlier, he described himself voyaging in a little boat across a vast stretch of sea as a pilot who must be filled with courage. And now, here is his star, his Stella Maris, the star of the sea. She is the most radiant light, who is herself arrayed in light, and yet she is also a flower, or as Dante calls her upon seeing her, the fair flower I invoke by name each morning and at evening time. This vision of glory is unprecedented, and yet Dante recognizes the heavenly lady whom he now sees. He prays to her every morning and night. In the morning, as the terrors of night pass, in the evening, when daylight fades. Here, there is no night from which to flee. Here, there is no fading of the sun. And yet, here she is, the brightest light among the lights, the fragrance sweetest of all, the star, the rose, to whom this pilgrim has sent up his prayers, day after day, pleading for mercy and for grace. It is by the power of his devotion that Dante beholds Mary's beauty. And yet, just as from the start of the Paradiso, when Dante, looking for a moment directly at the sun, saw another sun break forth, light within light, so here, as he beholds the most radiant one in Christ's garden, another light breaks forth. Mary is crowned in glory, light upon light. This crown of light speaks, rather it sings to Mary. I am angelic love, and I encircle the exalted joy breathed from your womb. That was the dwelling place of our desire. And I shall circle you, Lady of Heaven, until you follow your Son to the highest sphere, making it the more divine because you enter. This is the angel Gabriel. Dante beholds the glorious vision of the Annunciation, not on earth, but now in heaven. To see Mary as she is to see her wrapped in angelic love, full of grace, crowned from the start with the glory of heaven, blessed in her womb by joy himself. On earth, she brought the Son of God into the world. In heaven, the Son of God brings his mother into glory. Angelic love sings of this joyful exchange as one complete mystery. Gabriel circles Mary now so that Christ can bear her into glory. In heaven, the angel of the Annunciation sings of Mary's Assumption. When the angel's song concludes, Dante recalls that the other lights made Mary's name resound. The saints rejoice at Mary's glorification. Dante cannot yet see the full glory of Mary's Assumption. What is taking place here is, again, like the slow motion unfolding of one swift mystery. Dante is straining to see the glory of Mary's bodily Assumption. She is being lifted up into the deepest light of heaven, but he cannot see it directly, so he tells us what he can see. And to see it with him, we have to see everything all at once. I kid you not, this whole hour is about this next part. We have to see it all at once. Remember Beatrice as the mother bird. Remember Dante as the babe waiting to be fed. Remember the coming of the dawn, the lights of the garden, glory intensifying, joy resounding. Hold it all in your mind. Now listen and try to see. And like a baby reaching out its arms to mama after it has drunk her milk, its inner impulse kindled into outward flame. All these bright splendors were reaching upward with their fiery tips, so that their deep affection for Mary was made clear to me. Then they remained there in my sight, singing Regina Caeli with such sweetness that my feeling of delight has never left me. I actually hate to comment on this. If you can see it in your mind's eye, that's the better part. But I have to comment because that's my duty today. If we have held to the image from the canto's opening of the mother bird perching over her babes, now we can see that the mother bird is not Beatrice, but Mary. The babes are not just Dante, but all the saints. She wants to nourish them. She waits for it. They reach up to her. As the light of heaven breaks, she flies from the nest to gather their food. Her assumption is their nourishment. Her body assumed to heaven is the hope of their bodies being raised on the last day. These holy souls reach up as children for their mama. They reach up with their radiances. They reach up with their devotion, singing Regina Caeli. That's the Easter hymn to Mary. This is all the glory of Easter. The daily devotion Dante confessed in this canto is now the Regina Caeli of all the saints. It is how we, as children, express our desire for heavenly assumption, to go with Mama. And it is the sound of the saints rejoicing at the nourishment she brings them. As the Paradiso draws to a close, Beatrice, having done everything she was called to do, returns to her place in the company of the saints. Dante looks up to her and thanks her for all she has done, even leaving her place in heaven to go to the threshold of hell for him. Beatrice sees him in his gratitude. She hears his words. She smiles at him. Then, like she does, she turns her gaze to the source of light itself. Taking her place next to Dante is the pilgrim's final guide, St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Why Bernard? Because of his profound devotion to Mary. It is only by turning in devotion and prayer to Mary that this pilgrim and all like him will be made capable in the end of seeing God. The heart of Bernard's service to Dante is expressed in this one sweet command. Look now on the face that most resembles Christ, for nothing but its brightness can make you fit to look on Christ. Of all creatures, Mary is the one who most resembles the Son of God. He took flesh in her. Her voice surrounded him in the womb, shaping him. He looked upon her face as he nursed. Hers was the first smile he saw, hers the last eyes that filled with tears for him. She pondered him, she suffered for him, she has known the depths of his compassion, the height of his joy. She bore him on earth, he has borne her unto heaven. She is the creature who most resembles God. But to study her face, to see the resemblance to Christ and be changed by that visage, it is not enough to look as if from a distance, to observe, to measure. No, to look upon her and be prepared for glory means to enter into the love of devotion. It is to pray as one would do morning and evening, calling out for Mama. And so Bernard leads Dante in his final lesson. But lest by any chance beating your wings and thinking to advance, you should fall back, you must gain your grace through prayer. Grace from her who has the power to help you. You shall follow me with your devotion, so your heart does not stray from my words. The first words spoken in the Divine Comedy were miserere di me, mercy, have mercy on me. The final words spoken are Bernard's prayer of praise to Mary, a prayer that Dante joins with his own devotion. Bernard's prayer opens with 4 paradoxes. 1, he lauds Mary as Virgin Mother. 2nd, he praises her as the daughter of her Son. 3rd, he calls her more humble and more exalted than any other creature. And last, he reveres her as the one who has so ennobled human nature that the divine maker did not disdain to be made by what he has made. By these paradoxes, Bernard lifts his voice and his heart to the mystery of that glorious exchange of God and humanity, that harmony and union of humanity bearing God. Bernard presents to Mary this pilgrim, Dante, who now begs you by your grace to grant such power that by lifting up his eyes, he may rise higher toward his ultimate salvation. To Dante's prayer, Bernard adds all his own prayers, desiring nothing more than for this once lost man to be united to love itself. Then Bernard calls Mary's eyes to Beatrice and all the other saints whom he says, their palms are pressed together, joining me in prayer. Their will, their desire are together in union. This last part of Bernard's prayer discloses the final and complete image of a saint as a saint. Beatrice and the others are wholly given over to willing the good of another in prayer. It is their delight, their joy, to see him filled with all delight and joy. All eyes are now on Mary, and her eyes shine in the fullness of grace. Those eyes, beloved and revered by God, fixed on him who prayed, made clear to us how dear to her all true devotion is. That true devotion came from Bernard as it came from Dante. It came too from Beatrice, hands clasped in prayer, and the many saints gathered with her. Together they are like children running to the one they trust most, like babes reaching up to their mama. And what does Mama do? She flies to nourish them. She turned her gaze to eternal light. She brings this plea to God. She prays for Dante's salvation. With her eyes, Mary confesses in humility and grace what she always reveals to those who love her. I am not your end, but I bring you to the one who is. Dante prayed for this every morning and night. He prayed to the mother who nourishes her children, to the star who gives birth to the dawn. Dante's devotion is shown in his action. Before Bernard can even tell Dante to follow the Virgin's eyes, Dante is already doing it by his own accord. He knows her. He loves her. He trusts her. He knows that she flies to feed him, and he's finally ready to receive the food she brings. She, who brought God into the world, now brings Dante to God. He is assumed into glory by his own will and desire. He moves. That's the end of his pilgrimage. It's a pilgrimage about humanity bearing God. God bearing humanity. Mary's humanity. Dante's. Ours. Thank you.